and I'll give you a call later. Oh, hi. Back here at the Comic-Con, Larry's got a great interview right now. Kurt Busiek, who is the writer for Thunderbolts, Astro City, and the new Avengers, which is going to be coming out real soon. Great interview here. Check this one out.
Hi, I'm Larry Snowden, and we're back at the Chicago Comic-Con with yet another interview. This time we got the man of men, Kurt Busiek.
Man of men?
Yeah, man of men.
Man of men, okay, yeah. I like it.
See?
Can I put it on my business card?
Yeah, actually, you know, just as long as you give me a little credit, like TM symbol on trademark mine. But we're just going to ask him a couple of questions because he's a busy man and he's a little bit tired because it's Sunday morning. We just got to ask you a couple of questions. What was the first book that you read? I mean, what got you into comics in the first place? What inspired you?
Well, I wasn't really allowed to read much comics as a kid, but for some reason, when I was about 14, I picked up an issue of Daredevil off the newsstand, and it was the beginning of a 4-part story, and it had references to earlier things that had happened that sounded interesting, and I thought, wow, there's this cool whole world out there that you can explore. And by the time that story was over, the 4-part story, I'd found a comic book specialty store, and I was buying comics regularly.
Wow.
And it just, after a while, I realized that I didn't want to be a computer programmer, which is what I had thought I wanted to be. And so I thought, well, what else do I want to be if I grow up? And comic book writer seemed like, you know, that would be fun. And so, well, it is.
Okay, well, since you pretty much answered my next question for me, that's pretty good. What was your first pro work? How did you get your first pro work?
My first pro work was a backup story in Green Lantern number 162. I had been at college. I was taking all the courses I could think of that had anything to do with writing or magazine publishing or anything like that. And as one of them, as part of one of them, I had to do a term paper on an interview with some magazine publisher about how advertising works and what ad ratios are and how they support the magazine and all that kind of thing. And I snowed the teacher into letting me interview Dick Giordano, who, even though he wasn't technically a publisher, was responsible for a line of magazines that all carried the same advertising. So for advertising purposes, they're all the same magazine. He was then the editor-in-chief of DC. I interviewed him for the term paper, and then I told him that I wanted to be a comic book writer and how would I go about pitching stuff. And he said, well, send me some sample scripts. So I went back to college and I wrote about 64 pages worth of full scripts featuring Superman, Supergirl, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash, and I sent them in to Dick, and Dick, he didn't have time to read them himself. He was a busy guy.
Right.
He handed them out to the various editors for whom, who were editing the books that featured those characters. And the guy who was editing Flash at the time was Ernie Colon, and he liked my Flash script. Couldn't use it because there was a regular writer on Flash, but he invited me to pitch some Tales of the Green Lantern Corps plots, and I did. And he bought one, and that was my first assignment.
That's good. Now, one of the things that has been getting a lot of attention, I mean, you've written some wonderful stuff, but one of the things that a lot of fans are talking about is Astro City. Now, you started out originally with another company before your time at Image. Now, what happened there? Why did you transition the companies?
I'm not sure what you mean. Astro City's first publisher was Image, and after 6 issues, we moved it to Homage, which at that time was owned by Jim Lee but wasn't a part of Image. But by the time Astro City 3 came out, it was a part of Image again. So we kind of
almost did all my homework. Did all my homework.
But actually, the reason for that was very simple. We did the first 6 issues of Astro City for Image Central. And Image Central doesn't pay you anything in advance. And it was a very expensive book to put together because I'm working with Richard Starkings and Comicraft, I'm working with Brent Anderson, I'm working with Alex Ross. These are all guys who can command top rates elsewhere. So doing the first 6 issues was a lot of fun, but one thing we learned from it is that we would prefer to go with a publisher who would do all the publishing aspects of the book, including paying me up front, rather than me doing it all and getting the money on the back end. So after the 6th issue, we went on hiatus for schedule reasons, and then I started getting inquiries from publishers who were like, "Oh, you're on hiatus. Would you like to bring the book here? Would you like to bring the book here?" We got like 7 or 8 publishers who were interested in the book, and we talked to a couple of them seriously, and we ended up going with Jim Lee at Homage, who offered us just as much freedom as we had at Image, but the administrative organization of Wildstorm Productions. So we had a traffic manager, and they've got a coloring department, and they, all of the stuff that I was doing myself, like promoting the book, things like that, they had people to do that. And I could just sit down and write it, and it's much more refreshing. Plus, I get paid.
All right, well, that's always a plus, I think.
I like it. That's one of my favorite parts.
Now, if I get paid for doing this, I'd be a happy guy. Anyway, but one of the other things that you're also working on right now is Thunderbolts for Marvel, which has been garnering some great reviews so far.
And sales are starting to go up. I'm very, very happy with the response to Thunderbolts.
How did you come up with this whole Masters of Evil thing, pretending to be superheroes? I mean, what inspired that?
Well, I play dumb mental games with myself when I'm on long car trips because I got to stay awake somehow. Don't wanna, go off the road into a ditch. So sometimes what I'll do is I will just sort of assign myself a book that I don't think I'll ever get to write, just something I don't normally think about, and figure out, well, okay, presto, you're now writing this book, what are you going to do? And I've come up with a variety of ideas through doing that sort of thing. One car trip I was going, okay, you're writing the Avengers, what do you do? And I was coming up with different ideas, and one of them was, well, I like the way that the Avengers membership kind of always cycles, that people leave, new people come in, old characters come back, new characters show up. What if over the period of like a year or so, the Avengers, drifted off and new Avengers came in, and by the end of the year, that's when Captain America discovers that the team consists of him and the Masters of Evil in new costumes. What does he do? And so I had that idea sitting in my head for probably 6 or 7 years. Then Marvel invited me to come to a Marvel Creators Conference in the wake of Onslaught, to talk about the post-Onslaught Marvel Universe and what could be done. And I went off to it thinking, they gave away all my favorite characters. I don't want to do another book for Marvel. I'm happy with the stuff I've got. I'm swamped with work. And then I was just thinking, but one of the interesting things is there's never been a comic book, superhero universe in this situation. The heart of it has been scooped out.
Right.
There's this big hole in the middle. What does that mean? And me being me, my first thought was, what does that mean to those guys on the street who look up and point when the Human Torch flies by? They're going to be really, really scared because the Avengers are gone, the Fantastic Four are gone, the X-Men, who they think of as mutant terrorists, they're still around. The Ghost Rider, he's still around, the Hulk's still around, Doctor Strange is still around. Daredevil is probably the most cheery guy left in the Marvel Universe.
All the freaks are still here.
So I thought, well, what if the Masters of Evil showed up as a super team and said, "Hi, we're the new Avengers. We're shiny. We're bright. We're cool. We fight the good fight." And they would be just falling all over themselves to welcome these guys. And then the Masters of Evil would be in a position to do awful things and get away with it. And I thought, that could work. And I mentioned it to Tom Brevoort, and he said, that could be a lot of fun. And despite the fact that I had too much work and wasn't really that interested in doing something more for Marvel, we cornered Bob Harris in the bar and outlined the plan to him, and he went like this. He went, okay, let's do it. That's the fastest sale I have ever made. And by the next day, we had Mark Bagley signed on as penciler, and we were figuring out who the heck was going to be on the team in the first place, and we just kind of went on from there.